Hi guys, welcome to week 3 or module 3. This week I decided to take a deeper dive into the concepts of kind of like genetic counseling and adoption and kind of all those like procreation methods that were discussed in the beginning of chapter 2. And so one of the things I found was a really cool, it's kind of like a journal entry, and it was by the National Council for Adoption. It's basically like about a 4-page blurb about the different things you can expect and how to prepare children for the adoption of a sibling. It had different recommendations, kind of talking about like how to discuss with your child, like what is happening, or why you want to adopt, or making sure that they understand that it's not necessarily like a problem with them. And the article also talked a lot about just like how to also include the child in the adoption process and to make them feel welcome. And I was really interested in doing this topic as a reflection because I've kind of had a little experience with children in adoption. A couple summers ago, I was nannying for 2 different girls in the same family, and they were both adopted from China. And one of them was in middle school, and the other one was a grade school aged kid. She was probably, see, I watched them for 2 summers. So the first summer I watched them, she was in first grade. And it was really interesting to see how her family had discussed adoption with both her and her older sister. They both had a really good grasp on the fact that they were adopted because their parents couldn't have children, and that, that just because they were adopted but didn't mean they weren't loved by their birth mother and stuff like that. But specifically, the younger kid was always asking questions about, like she would ask a lot of questions about China specifically. And I don't know too much about China, but it was interesting to like hear how her parents would field the questions and really just like be completely open and honest with her and them. And that's kind of what this article talked about. At one point, it was talking about how you tell your children that you're adopting, like when you're kind of going into that. And it said that, let's see here, one specific thing it said is adoption is this adult decision, but keeping the kids informed when they ask questions is important. And it's kind of one of those things that they emphasize sharing information on a need-to-know basis with the kids and not necessarily being too open about it, just without prompts, because that could freak the child out. So yeah, it was a very interesting article. And I think it could be really good for child life specifically because I know adoption is, it's one of those things that's very prevalent in society, and I think that's awesome. But it's also something that seriously affects the other kids in a family, and to think about how, like, understanding that your parent might be adopting a kid from a different background, a different country, your sibling might look completely different than you, thinking about how that resonates with kids and has that kind of like psychosocial impact and really just affects their development and connection with their parents is, I think, something that's really important, and something that we as child life specialists can kind of help mitigate. Maybe not necessarily in the hospital, but if it's something that comes up, it's definitely not something that would hurt us to know. Let's see here. What else can I talk? What else should I say? Yeah, I think this is a really great article. And the other 2 resources that I shared were also kind of about genetic counseling and the controversies that kind of surround that, and like knowing disabilities and deformities that a child might be born with. And then the other article was just a brief it was a TED Talk, a brief overview of what a genetic counselor does and what their role is, which I think is important too, on kind of like the concept of this multidisciplinary team that we'll be working on, is to kind of understand everybody's scope of practice and really respect that and know when to contact who and who's the specialty person. So thank you guys for watching, and have a great week.